right now.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to this Master Series session on the eve of the Energy Efficiency Summit 2021. And we have this afternoon a very exciting session, starting with Brian Mothaway. I think he's someone who has been an iconic figure for energy efficiency and very closely associated with the International Energy Agency. As many of us know that there's been a lot of great work done in India, especially since the advent of the PAT scheme, PAT 1 and PAT 2. And Brian is someone who's been very closely following what's happening in India. And while we have done remarkable work in terms of energy efficiency in a couple of high energy sectors like steel, cement, pulp and paper, here we are today on the cusp of what I call as the next phase of transformation on energy efficiency. And we are extremely delighted to have Brian this afternoon. Just to give a short introduction to Brian, Brian is the head of Energy Efficiency Division at the IEA. He oversees a range of analytical and outreach programs supporting energy efficiency globally. Prior to IEA, he was the chief executive of the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. Brian holds a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in engineering and a PhD in sociology. One of the leading global experts, in my view, on energy efficiency, and he's been kind of guiding policymakers, stakeholders to really scale up and bring about the much needed transformation on energy efficiency. Interestingly, Brian is a great friend of India, and he has an extremely strong relationship with India, be it the Bureau of Energy Efficiency or the Energy EESL, and various other initiatives. And he's been a very frequent traveler, but unfortunately, COVID has stopped his passion for traveling to India. And I'm sure, Brian, you're missing the Indian food as well, which is something you probably enjoy a lot. Brian has a very strong guidance and leadership on many initiatives. He was the one who was responsible for the Energy Efficiency Annual Report 2019. He's also been very strongly supporting the policy support. Digitalization and energy efficiency is another passion of Brian. Cooling, a role of energy efficiency in economic stimulus, and many more. I can keep talking a lot about Brian. So over to you, Brian. You have about 20 minutes, and then we probably would take about 10 minutes on Q&A. So I'd like to welcome on behalf of CII GBC and this very enthralling audience who are so much interested to listen to you this afternoon. So over to you, Brian.
Ravi, thank you very much for your very kind introduction, and good afternoon to everybody, and thanks to CII GBC for inviting me. And I think the scale of this conference you've organized shows just how exciting energy efficiency is at the moment in India. And as you say, Ravi, I miss my frequent visits to India. I certainly miss the food. I can tell you that the Indian food in Paris is not a patch on what I used to get when I went to see my friends in BE, in ESL, and in Danfoss, and in many other good friends and colleagues in India. So I hope that we can start doing that again soon. So I'm very pleased to be talking to you today, just to give you a little bit of a global update on energy efficiency, particularly in industry. And of course, more and more, the context for this discussion is decarbonization. We know, of course, that energy efficiency brings many benefits, including job creation, reducing energy imports, reducing the cost of energy. But more and more governments are focusing on its absolutely central role in reducing carbon emissions from the energy system. And we see a lot of momentum globally in terms of rising ambition for reducing emissions, and I think maybe just a glimpse of starting to see stronger action. But of course, the need for stronger action, the need to see more happening on the ground is really the central theme here, and that's where industry can really play a leading role, particularly in energy efficiency. And I have to say to you that even though we see a lot of talk about decarbonisation and about tackling global warming, we're not seeing that translating at the moment into impacts. In 2021, global emissions will rise again after the dip of 2020 caused by COVID and all the disruption of COVID. We're seeing a very quick rebound in both energy demand and consequently in energy related emissions. So we are not on track for the ambition we are describing for ourselves. We are not seeing the right direction of travel for energy demand or global emissions at the present. Now, when we look at what it will take to get us there, of course, energy efficiency is absolutely central. You know that in the IEA, we call energy efficiency the first fuel. We see it as the first port of call for action in terms of making energy systems cleaner, more sustainable, more affordable, and ready for the future. When we in the IEA analyze our pathway towards decarbonisation, we see that a huge part of the emissions reduction comes from energy efficiency, particularly in the early part. In the next decade, energy efficiency is absolutely crucial if we have any chance of getting on a path towards net zero or whatever level of carbon reduction ambition we set for ourselves. And of course, efficiency brings some advantages. It can be mobilized relatively quickly. We know there are technologies and solutions available today that can be scaled up quickly. And efficiency can create jobs very quickly, particularly important now in the times of looking to economic recovery and economic stimulus. And of course, can bring wider benefits, including making the air cleaner in cities, reducing people's bills, bringing affordable access to people that don't have it at present. And more than that, energy efficiency makes all of the other decarbonisation actions more possible. It reduces the scale of the challenge in terms of future energy systems, in terms of infrastructure requirement, in terms of investment requirement. So energy efficiency is very much the leading sphere of action for decarbonisation more generally. And as you said, Ravi, India has a great success here and is known globally for its great success in energy efficiency in many spheres. And we know that the work of BEE is really leading in many of its policy areas. We know that EESL is famous for its success in lighting, now in electric vehicles and in other areas. And we know that many of the policies that India has deployed in all sectors for energy efficiency have really proven what is possible, but also how the gains are widely felt in terms of making energy more affordable, more secure, and of course, cleaner. Now, if I turn to industry, first of all, industry represents about a third of global emissions from the energy sector in direct emissions terms, and it has grown dramatically across the world. Energy use in industry has grown by about 70% in the last 30 years as economies become richer, as it creates jobs and creates wealth. This is a good thing, but it shows that it's a real point of action for decarbonisation. And according to our net zero pathway, industry represents about a third of the CO2 savings potential in the next 3 decades. Of course, efficiency leads that. We see huge opportunities in all parts of industry for efficiency gains. We have made a lot of progress in terms of technology, policy, energy management, control of energy in the recent decades, but all that has shown us is that huge potential remains. There's huge potential in all sectors and in all technologies for efficiency gains. We see hundreds of billions of euros to be saved, of US dollars or whatever currency across the globe in the coming years. We see literally savings of hundreds of billions available across industry if it can tackle its energy use in a way that allows growth, allows productivity gains, allows job creation, but also minimizes energy use by becoming more productive and more efficient through the deployment of better technologies, better management systems, better solutions. Now, in large industry, we see that a lot of new technologies are going to be important. We know that in a lot of heavy, very intensive industry, growth continues. We see sectors such as iron and steel, cement, chemicals, underpinning the growth of our economies, which is a very important thing. And we know that the technical solutions to decarbonize those sectors are not easy. They will involve new technologies, whether it's supply side technologies like the use of hydrogen or CCUS, or whether it's advanced demand solutions involving much better energy management, much better digitalized control. And we also see the need to look at the whole supply chain in terms of where we use steel and cement, what resources we use to create them in the first place. So we're going to need to look at very holistic solutions for those sectors, many based on technologies that are still emerging. On the other hand, if we look at the less energy intensive sectors, the smaller SME sectors, first of all, we see the bulk of savings, actually 70% of the efficiency gains in the coming decades could come from smaller, less intensive sectors. And that's because the larger sectors have received a lot of attention in recent years, have been deploying a lot of new technologies. We know, for example, that India has a very efficient cement sector because of the deployment of new technologies as the sector has grown. But many smaller industries are not as focused on efficiency and haven't deployed the technologies or solutions available. And that's where we see a lot of the gains in energy efficiency will come from in the next decades. We see key technologies obviously around motors, compressed air, heating systems, steam, hot water, all showing great potential for efficiency gains. And I want to say that we're working with the government of India and a number of governments around the world on an initiative that will be launched finally at COP26 in Glasgow in a few weeks' time, where we're looking to greatly raise the ambition for global energy efficiency in a lot of key technologies, including lighting and cooling and also motor systems. So we're going to see a lot of focus on the importance of raising ambition for energy efficiency in key technologies in the coming decades. Now, in India, industry has been the key sector really for efficiency gains in the last couple of decades. According to our analysis, it actually represents maybe 3/4 of the efficiency gains made in India in the last couple of decades have come from industry. And of course, this has been driven by policy. And as you mentioned, Ravi, Perform, Achieve and Trade, the PAT scheme, PAT 1 and PAT 2, have been really global superstars in terms of how to do energy efficiency policy, particularly for large industry, because we've seen the whole cycle from the benchmarking, the setting of targets, from the way the targets are deployed, from the trading mechanisms. We really see an excellent example of policy working to drive efficiency gains to the extent that the targets, of course, have been exceeded in so many areas, and that's really a positive. We see other policies are being really important, including the use of standards and labeling, although they have mostly been in other sectors, but they have been deployed in industry as well. So the next phase will include a focus on those policies. We're looking forward to seeing how those policies continue. But as I mentioned, India is no different to the rest of the world when we see that we need a stronger focus on micro, small and medium enterprises, where there are huge amounts of energy efficiency gains scattered around a very large number of smaller companies and smaller industries. And of course, as you can imagine, the policy solutions here are different than they would be for large industry, because instead of dealing with a relatively small number of very large energy users, you're now dealing with a very large number of relatively small energy users. And the kind of relationship policymakers and government can have with those sectors is obviously quite different, and the kind of policies required are different. And of course, as you know better than I, Ravi, when your energy bill is 5 or 10% of your turnover, it gets quite a bit of attention. But when it's less than 1%, maybe it doesn't get the same attention. Maybe the expertise isn't available, maybe the interest isn't as strong. But of course, those bills add up to a huge energy bill for India as a whole, a huge requirement for energy importing, and of course a huge emissions impact. So it's important that these sectors be focused on as well. And I'm pleased to say we're working very closely with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency at the moment, looking at this. And in particular, we've taken one very important sector for India for a deeper dive on how to work with a large number of smaller users. And that sector is the textile sector. Textiles are very important in India. They contribute about 2% of global GDP, and they, according to estimates, they employ maybe 45 million people directly, as well as wider employment gains. So it's a very large employer, a very important sector for India as a whole, and of course a very important energy user. So we've been working to study the sector with BEE and with many counterparts and friends across India to look at the kind of technologies that are available to make the sector more efficient, and ultimately then the kinds of policies that can be deployed to help drive those efficiency gains. We've interviewed and surveyed a lot of companies. We discussed with them how energy is used. We've looked at some key technologies such as spinning and weaving, which are some of the key users of electricity, and of course processing, which is really the main user of thermal energy, and to see how energy efficiency gains can be supported, how those firms and employers and employees can be supported to become more efficient through policy. We'll be publishing some of that work soon, and I look forward to discussing all of that with you further. I think it's a very good example of where BE is looking to the next stage of energy efficiency, looking to the future, and helping support employment and industrial growth in India through efficiency gains and productivity gains. So across the world, we see a lot of very interesting developments in energy efficiency. We see steady progress. Each year, the world is becoming more energy efficient. This year, when measured as primary energy intensity, the world will become about 1% more energy efficient. So in other words, we're extracting more value from each unit of energy that we use. But that pace of progress is not fast enough. We need to at least triple that if we want to get back on track for our global carbon targets. So we need to rapidly increase investment and activity in the global energy efficiency sector. And we see that it has that potential. We know the technologies are ready in many cases, particularly for the early stage deployment in sectors such as more advanced appliances, better built buildings, more advanced infrastructure. We know the technologies are ready. And we also know the kind of policies that are available to policymakers that are well proven, whether it's regulation, standards, labeling, building codes, whether it's incentives and other support mechanisms, or whether it's market-based instruments such as PAT and many schemes we see around the world, such as utility obligation schemes, resource planning, and things like that. So we know that in the early days, efficiency can move quickly. But we also need to think of the future. Where is efficiency going next? And in my view, the most important emerging trend in energy efficiency and energy more generally is the deployment of digital technologies and the opportunities that they represent for the future gains of energy efficiency. We see huge deployment of digital technologies, whether it's our smartphones, whether it's smart technologies in our homes, whether it's smart devices on our grids, in industry, in our offices and shops and places of employment. Literally billions of devices are being installed that have the capability to connect to each other, to gather real-time data, to gather and analyze large amounts of data, all of which creates opportunities to optimize energy use and increase energy efficiency. And we see this already in end use, where we see building energy management systems, industrial energy management systems, and of course, you know this much better than I do, Ravi, really producing very significant savings, improving comfort for people in their buildings, improving productivity, quality, and general running in industry, as well as saving very large amounts of energy, making production more profitable, making it cleaner and more sustainable for the future. I think the next phase will lead us to think more in systems terms as well. So instead of just thinking about the end use efficiency of our appliances or our energy using products, we're also thinking more about how do we optimize, particularly in electricity, the overall efficiency of the grid, where we see more and more deployment of solar and wind, other variable technologies. We see the time and location really becoming important. There are times in the day when solar is readily available and cheap and making systems clean, and the value of end use efficiency is different at those moments than it is at other times when we're relying on more expensive, more carbon intensive sources of generation. So energy efficiency, like electricity more generally, has to modernize to think about real-time interaction with the overall system. How can it become more flexible? How can we deploy demand-side flexibility to optimize grids? And of course, digitalization makes all of that possible in ways that even a few years ago had huge barriers in terms of transaction costs, availability of data, willingness to participate. It can all now be automated, made an awful lot cheaper, an awful lot more efficient through digital technologies. And this is something that we in the IEA really believe is going to make a difference to energy efficiency. And we're working with many governments around the world, including the government of India, to think about what the future of energy efficiency looks like through digital technologies. Lastly, Ravi, before I finish, I just wanted to mention that all of the dimensions of the clean energy transitions that all countries are embarking on now and are starting to act upon involve people. It's really important that even when we talk about here about technologies and policies and economic instruments, that we must remember that all of these changes that society is going to go through are about making lives better for people, about improving the environment, the economic situation, and need to remember that people need to be actively involved in clean energy transitions, understanding the changes they're going to go through, participating in behavior change, maybe facing some changes to the price of certain technologies, maybe being asked to buy different technologies in the future. And it's very important that all of our policies be people-centered with a focus on inclusiveness and equity. And that is why at the moment we are working with a global commission for people-centered clean energy transitions, which is a bringing together of energy and climate ministers and other leading thinkers around the world to look at the best practice in how clean energy transitions can have a focus on people, inclusiveness and equity. And the Global Commission will make its recommendations in just a few weeks' time in October as an input into the COP26 climate discussions taking place in Glasgow in November. So I hope these will be of interest as well to everybody listening today. So all of these issues, I hope, have been of some interest, and thank you for giving me the time to talk today, and I look forward to hearing and discussing your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian, for that very thoughtful and insightful session on sharing your views on the opportunities that energy efficiency presents to both India as well as to the business in whole. Let me just check on some questions for you. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Brian, there's a question on, could you please tell us a little on the IEA Clean Energy Transition Program around the world and its impact so far?
Thank you for that question. We're very pleased to be working with almost every government in the world at this stage. Some of you might know that the IEA originally dealt with only a certain number of countries. We were focused on certain parts of the world, but in recent years, driven by our executive director, Dr. Fatih Birol, we have opened up the doors to engagement. And of course, one of our key and most important partners that is we've really grown our work with in recent years is India, and we're delighted and honored to have that close, positive relationship with the government of India and with the many stakeholders across the country. And what we've really seen is that countries across the world can learn from each other. The key success of our Clean Energy Transitions Program is to allow countries to learn not just from our data and our analysis, but from each other. So I had mentioned earlier that many countries across the world are really interested in what India has achieved in the PAT scheme, what India has achieved in programs like Ujala, but equally, India has been able to learn from what's going on in other countries, in other sectors. So that exchange of information is really important, and a real sense that we are in a global community of actors. Global clean energy transitions rely on collaboration. They rely on countries working with each other and learning from each other. And we've been very pleased to be able to facilitate that kind of exchange through our Clean Energy Transitions Program.
Yeah, thank you. Brian, you have been pretty much very close to this India Energy Outlook published by IEA. Could you just kind of summarize the key takeaways for the benefit of our participants?
I guess the key word from the India Energy Outlook for me is opportunity. There's such a great opportunity as India grows and develops and remains a leader in so many technologies and so many sectors. there's a great opportunity to lock in efficiency and clean energy technologies for the future. And we see some fascinating developments. Obviously, we've focused on industry today, but we see some fascinating developments in the building sector, in transport as well. But India faces challenges that all fast-growing economies do in terms of where will the energy come from to power that growth that is so important to benefit people's lives. So we see the question of the growth of renewables, the really rapid growth in solar in particular, as well as wind. We see the focus on reducing import dependence away from more intensive imported fuels. And we see some key demand areas. We see transport growing very quickly. We see industry growing very quickly. And we see certain sectors like cooling being crucial. India is already a leader in terms of thinking about efficient cooling of the future because it needs to, because the people of India deserve the cooling made available through AC and fans and other technologies. And as people grow wealthier and be able to afford these technologies, they will, of course, buy them. And if they buy inefficient equipment, that will create stress on the electricity system. It will create stress on overall national and global emissions. And so it's really crucial that now, in a sector like cooling that's growing so rapidly, we lock in better technologies, we lock in efficiency gains that will benefit for decades. So the story of growth in India and the story of economic growth and therefore energy growth is really one of seeing what the right energy solutions are to lock in the positives rather than to risk the negatives.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. The next one is you mentioned about energy efficiency should kind of become a people movement. That was at least one of the visions you had, that how do you change the mindset of everyone and see the benefits that each and every Indian citizen starts to embrace energy efficiency at the core of everything he or she does. What are your top 3 recommendations for that to the viewers on the platform?
Another very good question. These are all very good questions. I guess having spent many years working in energy efficiency, I realize it's very difficult to get people excited about energy efficiency. Apart from you and I, Ravi, and some of the people on this call, most people don't think a lot about energy efficiency. They don't get excited by it, but they are interested in questions like, how do I cool my home? Can I afford lighting? How can I pay for my car or pay for my transport? And in ways that is affordable, that is reliable. I'm interested in the clean air in my city. I'm interested in the climate of the future for my children and grandchildren. So you can really engage people on issues that matter to them and make them realize that energy efficiency can help all of these things. Having said that, I still think we're never going to reach a point where everybody is thinking about energy efficiency all the time. And I think this is where digital technology really makes a difference. Rather than asking people to think about the energy they use all the time and to switch things off or to optimize things or to change settings, our digital technologies can help with that. We already know there are apps on the smartphone for controlling the lighting in your home or for finding a way around a city in a most sustainable way. So I think kind of releasing people from the pressure of needing to think about these things all the time through digital technologies will be very important.
Thank you. There's a question on the chat box. How do we make the work in energy efficiency sector gender agnostic as we move forward?
It's certainly true that the energy sector globally has a gender problem or a gender challenge, shall I say, that women are not nearly as well employed in energy globally, and including energy efficiency. And this is something the IEA is working on with many of our member governments to look at how we can improve gender equality and greater participation of women in all parts of the energy sector, including energy efficiency. I think that we're certainly going in the right direction, but not nearly as fast as we need to. I think energy efficiency offers some opportunities because, as well as it has a kind of a mission-driven kind of focus, I think, that makes it more exciting, and it also employs many different types of people, whether they're in technology or engineering or social science or economics. So I think that I'm hoping that we can make energy efficiency both more exciting for women to work in and also more welcoming for women to work in. I'd be very keen to follow up with colleagues who have ideas on how we can push that. It's a very high priority for us at the IEA and for all of our member governments.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I think we are more or less at the end of the session. So I kind of would like to sum up this very insightful session that you shared this afternoon. Clearly, you articulated that there's a lot more to gain from focusing on energy efficiency, be it the jobs we can create, be it the air that we can breathe, better quality, the value it adds to the business, the journey it can help in accelerating the net zero. But clearly, you also mentioned about the need for tripling the opportunity that exists in energy efficiency. A lot more technology-driven investments need to be fueled. Rapid investments is what you kind of said. Take full advantage of the digital. The penetration of digital is still very nascent. Take full advantage of digital. You also gave some very good examples of why we need a system thinking in terms of how we look at energy efficiency. I think policy clearly has helped to kind of pulverize the high energy users and get to where we are. But we need to do a lot more, including changing the mindset of people and make this more a people movement. So I think overall, I think you clearly articulated the value energy efficiency brings both to the economy as well as to the business. It makes a lot of business sense to do what we do. So I really thank on behalf of CII GBC for you taking time and share with us your thoughts. Really appreciate it, Brian. And I know it's difficult sitting virtually to do a lot more talking on the sidelines, which we normally do in the sessions. I really look forward to our next meeting opportunity, wherever it is and whenever it is. Thank you very much, Brian, on behalf of all of us here. Have a wonderful day in Paris, and look forward to seeing you soon at some point in time.
Thank you very much, Ravi, and thank you to everybody. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nisha, for putting together the program. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Brian. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. For the participants, we have our next session starting within 5 minutes at 2:50. Kindly join us. Thank you.